welcome to GA for Justice. And we getting ready to bring the lady, the host with the most. I'm talking about the one and only, you know her as the hardest working lady on the internet. Should I say, because we here on GA for Justice on the network of WVDM Radio Network. And I'm talking about the one and only former president of the NAACP in Virginia Beach. I hope she can hear me. I'm talking about the one and only, the hardest working lady in the community. She's known as Georgia Allen. Hello, good morning.
Hello. I am so excited. It is Thursday. Did this week go by fast or what? I'm like,
the
wow.
month's, the month's out.
I'm like, it is a brand new month. It's September. We are about approaching fall of the year, and I'm telling you, I'm so excited. We've been having some awesome events going on around the community. Haven't been able to make them all, but it's always good to get out and about. Again, I'm Georgia F. Allen bringing you greetings from GA for Justice. And as always, we want to welcome all of you to our weekly show. As always, it is a conversation for information, a conversation for correction, and a conversation for transformation. We always want to thank none other than the producer, then the owner, then the engineer, for the opportunity, Mr. Henderson Vaughn, also known as the Dream Maker. But for those of us who grew up here, Captain 85. He will always be our Captain 85.
That's what I'm talking about.
And so we want to continue to share information to all of you here in the 757 and beyond. It is so important that we keep the conversation going because we have seen all the negativity that can happen when we're not communicating with one another, or if we have a group over here that's communicating and they don't want to talk to this group over here, and we have all of these divisive things going on in the community locally, but then we have all the national divisiveness going on. So it's critically important that we begin to open up those conversations again. We recognize that our churches, our schools, our buildings have been closed previously because of COVID, and people are struggling somewhat to get back into the gist of things. And that's happening all around, because even though the churches open up again, a lot of the people still didn't come back to sit in the pews. They began to watch it on the television, on the Facebook, and all these different ways of watching everything now with technology. And so they're not coming together and communing together. And community is about coming together, communing together, talking to one another, listening, because that's another thing that has taken place in our community is we're battling for the microphone.
Right.
So this one voice has to be a little bit louder than this voice over here, because they feel that what they have to say is greater and more important than what our comrade might have to say. So I'm going to talk about community unity, because it's critically important that we unite. There is a lot of things that's impacting us on so many levels. If we look at what is going on in our school system, where we're being programmed with CRT. And if you know anything about CRT, CRT is a college level educational program. It's a class. It's information that talks to our young people from a legal standpoint of critical race theory, and how it works in the judicial system, how it works in the court system. And of course, as always, people go out and they co-opt something and change its meaning. And so as I go through these various trainings, which last night it was Community First Solutions brought us a training that talked to us about CRT and the art of CRT, the art of what they're doing. And basically, the system is designed to engage the masses to go out and create disturbances. Okay. Create disturbances on the school board, you
Mm.
know. So you have folks who are not educators, who are not legal scientists. And what they did is they had two groups. They have the chess pieces and they have the chess players. So the chess pieces are those parents that you see come to the school board meeting and say, we don't want our children to know anything about CRT. And you have the chess players behind the scenes getting them ginned up, getting them engaged, getting them to go to the school board meetings and say, we don't want CRT. And then when you ask them, well, what is CRT?
Yeah.
What is it? And guess what? They don't know what it is. They don't even know that CRT is not taught anywhere in the United States of America in the K through 12 system. It's not taught, but they make laws about it. They have introduced 137 gag order bills in 36 states, legislative bills impacting what is taught or not taught in our school systems. Now, mind you, these are legislators. These are not people in the school system itself who know something about the school books.
Mm-hmm.
This is not anybody that's serving on the school board that knows something about the school books. It's someone sitting in a state house or a national level that starts talking about CRT. If you notice, when we had our last election in the Commonwealth of Virginia, what did the guy do? He said, we don't want CRT. We don't want this in our school system. So he chanted that message. He made it into a soundbite. He made it into a slogan. And what did he do? He won the last election for governor. But that's just one side of it.
Mm-hmm.
The other side is we need community engagement who believes that it is okay for our children to know truth. So when we hear one group out there saying, because they wrote it into the law with regards to what can be taught and what can't be taught and all, we need the other side to go to the school board and say to them that I want you to pull all these books out of the school system that does not teach truth. If they give you a book that says Columbus discovered America, then bombard them.
Right.
Bombard them with all of your friends and relatives and say, well, since you said we can't teach that in the school system, we can't teach this either. If you say we cannot teach about Dr. King or Harriet Tubman or A. Philip Randolph in the school system, then you can't teach that Columbus discovered America. So get the book out, take it
Right.
out. So if we come together as a unit, if we unify, then the same thing that they were challenging our books on or our information on, let's go back and challenge them on the information that they're teaching. Okay, let's unify. That's what community unity is all about.
Right.
It's about us recognizing what we can do and effective ways and techniques that we can do these things to fight back against what these various groups, and mostly they're PACs, they're far right wing PACs that are having these conversations and putting these various rules and regulations in place to make sure that they're the winners and we're the losers. And basically, it really came about because of what they call it, you know, homonyms, two entirely different meaning for the same word, or in this case, the same acronym CRT. So they have two meanings for CRT. They have their meaning, and their meaning is we don't want it because you're programming our children and you're making them feel uncomfortable. So we don't want you to tell our children that there was enslavement in this nation. We don't want you telling our children that their forefathers made millions of dollars off of enslavement. We don't want you to tell our children that all that land that we got, all that work that was done, that their mama and daddy didn't do it. That
Hello.
somebody else did it for free and did not get paid.
Right.
They made and received all the benefits,
Right.
which allowed them to leave money from generation to generation to generation. So they don't want us to teach that in
Right.
the precious school system. So they want us also to be chess pieces. But this is the way they want us to be the chess pieces. They didn't want us to stay at home and not get involved. So they're playing chess
Yeah.
with folks that go out, speak out on issues, and they're playing chess with the people who stay at home and don't say a thing. So when I talk about community unity, I want us to understand that now is the time to read up on what these school systems rules are. You want to understand the bills that are being passed because they're playing the long game. They're not just playing for today, they're playing for generations into the future. They are playing the long game because if they put these different legislations in place, and what ultimately happens is you teach differently. So we have this white nationalism that is going on, and uh, and so as they come into the forefront, which they, used to kind of stay behind the scenes a lot, but they're
Mhm.
more and more coming into the forefront so that they can pass their message and they can gin up all of these different groups, whether it's the Tea Party, whether it's um, the the various groups that came out on January the 6th, the Proud Boys, and all of these various groups. They do that so they keep you distracted or they get you frustrated. And now you're fighting within your own homes. Now you're
Hello.
fighting within your own community. And so I'm here to say today, beyond a shadow of a doubt, if we want to win this fight, Black America, you're going to have to unite. It's as simple as that. You cannot sit on the sidelines when they're making decisions about not only your children that are in school right now,
Hmm.
but they're putting this in place for decades to come. That means that's your grandchild,
Hello.
great grandchild. And when you're gone, it's for those unborn, okay?
Yep.
Those have yet to be born. And so our job right now is to get involved. Our job right now is to read up on what bills have been passed, to read up on what the local school board looks like and what the rules and regulations are within that system, so that now we can counter that system. We can fight back. We can research our state laws. We can research our school board policies. And if you don't want to do it by yourself, make a decision that you're going to form a team of parents. You're going to have your own PTA, okay? But your
Yeah.
PTA is in your neighborhood. Your PTA will be in your church. Your PTA will be in your community center. Your PTA will be in your Masonic temple. Your PTA will be with your Eastern Stars, with your Deltas, with your AKA, and with all of these other groups and organizations that are out here. Your PTA will be with your NAACP. And I say that because we have a tendency to look at our issues as so large that we can't solve the problem. So then, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So let's take it one bite at a time.
Yeah.
Let's take these organizations that we already have in our community and let's communicate with each other. If over here I have a bunch of doctors and lawyers in this organization, and over here I have a bunch of teachers and engineers in this organization, over here I have a bunch of hospitality people or city workers over here, find out what are your skill sets and then say, listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to break it up in chunks. I need you to go before school board. I need you to speak to this issue on this night. So guess what? Now we're not shouldering the entire burden. We're
Right.
dividing it up. But we're dividing it up in a united way because we all know what each other job is to do. If it's my job to go and speak to the school board with regards to the type of books that they have in the system, then that's my job. And stay in my lane and don't jump over here in this other guy's lane. That's another thing that we need to do.
Yeah.
Learn how to stay in our lane. And if you do that effectively, guess what? You get better and better at it. And then you still get to come back together and you talk about when the NAACP went down to school board or city council. You come back together and the Masons tell us about what they did, or we listen to it on the electronic web. I mean, on the web, we listen to it and we read and we see it and we know what they did, and now we can have a conversation together about what each one of our groups have done, and we began to get better and better at what we're doing. But we also can pressure point things. We can identify pressure points and push the buttons to get the right outcome. Because it's not enough to just go down and speak. The ultimate goal is to get the right outcome. Okay? And so, again, it is important that we research our state laws, that we research our school policies, so that we can be the ones that make a difference and make a change in what's taking place in our community. That's about unity. Okay. The next thing that I want to talk about is all these crimes and issues and things that are going on in our community. And it's quite disturbing. No doubt about it. It is quite disturbing. I had the good fortune to go down to Norfolk State University and sit and hear from Attorney Benjamin Crump to talk about the crisis that's going on in America. And he reminds us, and he reminded the police chief that was there, the acting chief of Norfolk, and many others that was there. There was a number of elected officials there, of course. And what he reminded the police chief about is that crime is everywhere, but it's how crime is being identified. If you're coming to the microphone and you happen to call everyone who is Black a thug, but when crime happens in other communities, you call it, something more polite, something far more gentle.
Yeah.
Then children who are of the Black community tend to be treated differently. And if we're going to change that, and I've been pushing, to try to change some of this from a standpoint of more community involvement. One of the things they said that we got to make sure that the policymakers are making better policies. So that's our politicians. We want to make sure we get input from our students, which I thought that was excellent. Is we want to hear from our young people, but the enforcers of the laws that are out here, which is our police department, our sheriffs, our law enforcement officers, we got to make sure that when they enforce the laws, they enforce them equitably. They cannot sit here and put a gun to a child's head for stealing a bag of chips, and a person who is actually shooting police officers because he has a different skin tone. You can somehow bring him in safe and sound, feed him with our tax dollars, but you just blew the brains out of a child that stole a bag of potato chips because that child was black.
Mhm.
Okay. And then the final piece, so you have your policymakers or your politicians who make laws. You have your enforcers, which is our police department, who enforce laws. And then you have our community. What is it that they can do? And our community is broader than just the family. Our community is our businesses that operate in our communities, regardless of where they're from. Okay, so you can't come into a community where no one looks like you, but you suck all of their revenue out of the community, but you're never ever there to speak out or speak up or speak on or speak with or unite with the community that you're sucking out their economics. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So that's important. Higher learning. We have colleges all over our cities because there's Southern University on one corner, there's Strayer on another corner, there's Stratford somewhere else, there's VWC, NSU, all ODU, okay, TCC. You have all of these private colleges, Braden and Stratton, and Bryan and Stratton, and I think there's another one called Bratton and something.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is we have enough education institutions that we need to call them out and say, you know what? If we're paying you to go to your school and you are for profit, then you need to put something back in terms of providing jobs, providing opportunities, internships, whatever. But you have to do something other than put your building on a block and then young people, older people, everybody is going to your school, but yet we don't see any really real return on the investment.
Yep.
So there's a lot that we can talk about when it comes to what is taking place in our communities with regards to an increase in increase in crime. And most of it has to do with the lack of activities. You cannot wipe out low income housing and not have already had a alternative other than a voucher. All right. If my house is torn down, holding a voucher in my hand is not going to put a roof over my head. Okay.
Right.
So I need a little bit more than a voucher. So when these decisions are made, and that's why it is so important that we vote. It is so important that we look at what our city council members are doing, our school board members are doing. It is critically important. Are these the people that can represent you and represent you well? So when we're looking at what's going on in the criminal justice system, again, politicians make the policy, but they are also making the economic decisions with regards to whether or not we have housing, and then what is the cost of that housing. So if I tear down my projects and I give you a voucher, but the voucher is not enough money to pay for standard housing, you still have no roof over your head. That is a problem. So when we're looking again at our systems that are in place, when we're looking at who are who is in charge in running these systems, if you didn't think your vote was important before, let me explain to you. It's critically important because some of these people need to be rooted out because they're not doing things in your best interest.
Hello.
They are not doing the work in your best interest. They haven't built a community center in your neighborhood. Okay, they haven't put in place activities in your community. And when people are getting millions of dollars for infrastructure, that also included community infrastructure. So if your road does not need to be fixed, but around you, some things need to be pushed down and new things need to be built up, then how about letting that money go into the community using Black-owned businesses to create jobs for our young people, for our parents, and for many others? Those are the things that have to be done. And that has to be done with our being engaged. And sitting on the sideline is not the answer. The answer is community unity. That's the answer. Getting involved, not sitting on the sidelines. That is not the answer. We have an excellent opportunity right now. Again, I had the pleasure of listening to Attorney Crump sharing with the audience because he didn't bite his tongue. He let the audience know, those in leadership and those guests, that this is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. The number of young people who are dying for no real good reason.
Hello.
And that's both internally and externally. It is important that we make sure that we look at the things in our community that may be dragging us down. And when I looked at it, the one thing that I thought of is at one point in time, our Black men were the keepers and the gatekeepers in our community. And I believe with all of my heart, with all of my spirit, that needs to come back. And I call it the PSS, Protect and Serve Squad. That means we implement our own internal policing. That means our men can work collectively. That means our Black Panthers, Nation of Islam people, all of us can come together. Our ministers, deacons in the churches, let us come together and say, you know what? We have a strategy. And the strategy is this team of 10, they're responsible for this part of our community. This other team over here, you're responsible for this part of the community. And learn how to work together. You got everything you need. You got technology. You can call each other. You can set up group chats. You can do all of that with technology. So if you have a PSS, a Protect and Serve Squad that looks like you, that can sit down and talk to our young people and say, look, let's raise you up as young men to protect and serve and protect your family members, your younger sisters, your older sisters, your mom. That's what we need you to do. So we're going to have to look at this a little differently. We can't depend 100% on the systems that are in place. We're going to have to create our own. But the other thing about creating our own, we can't let them off the hook. Okay? We cannot let them off the hook. because our cities have our money. Because you know why? We pay them taxes. So we put in place our own PSS. If we need a child to go or an adult to go to the police station, then we can be assured that we can probably get them there safer than what the police department is doing. So if we're doing this, then we should have some pot of money to help us with the other things that we need to ensure safety and security. All right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Of course you're right.
Am I right?
No. It's difficult because even like you said, the gentleman was speaking not just to the people that's in charge, but to the people that they got under them that's in charge. That's really keeping the process, the violence from ceasing.
Right.
I talked to a gentleman at, I ain't gonna call what city,
Right.
sheriff department. He said, "Man, we get millions of dollars." I said, "Well, okay, well,
What do you do with it?
I said, yeah, that's what I'm saying." I said, "Well, I'm just calling to see where y'all purchase some of my books. Man, we got a library full of books." I said, "Okay, yeah, we're doing a great job over here working. We got the pastors coming in, talking to the prisoners. Okay." But I said, "Don't your city have people from 12 to 27 years old still in the pipeline of prison that's just sitting in the Norfolk jail, ain't even been to trial yet?"
Mm.
Hey, man, look, I'm from Norfolk and everybody know me. I'm 40 years old. I said, "It ain't about you. It's
Right.
about the prison. I mean, the kids in the community.
Absolutely.
They ain't gonna talk to you. They don't talk to the police." I've been out there in the communities with the news media. As soon as the news media go up to somebody, they walk away, they go in their house, they lock the doors because they ain't trying to get killed.
Exactly.
You have to be able to have an organization. People, young people have to trust you to
Absolutely.
tell you what's going on.
Absolutely.
And it's like they're bringing programs to keep young people from talking. So if you got an organization and like, "I want to be a part of that," and then you got other people like, "Oh, you don't want to be a part of that. You need to be over here." But aren't we all doing the same thing?
Absolutely.
I'm just trying to get some books in the young people's hands so they can start asking questions. Because if they start asking questions, wait a minute, that's one we might be able to save.
Absolutely.
So it's hard. It's hard.
It can be challenging. I will say that it definitely can be challenging when we are looking at our young people and we're seeing everything that's going on around.
Yeah.
But we don't see any real solutions. We have the conversation and even down to business owners. You look and a lot of times the city says, "Well, we got to shut this business down because there was a fighting, there was a shooting, there was this, there was that." But have you talked with the people and the why of the shooting? And are there any other people out there with similar mindset? And can we start to communicate with them early on to avoid the shooting in the first place? See, I'm one of these people. I'm a prevention person. I beyond a shadow of a doubt, believes that we should be looking for tools and ways to prevent something so that we don't have to work with the aftermath of something happening. I look at all of these mass shooters, for instance. With technology, most of those young people were all over the net. They were all over the internet talking about what they're going to do and all of this. But did we listen or did we ignore them?
They listening, but they preferred to happen. Why? Because it's the pipeline to prison. They are putting these young people in jail They're not sick. They go to jail. You know, this is the system, how the system is set up. We're going to put you in jail for 10, 20 years. Then you can find Jesus. Jesus is locked up. Muhammad is in prison. So you got to go there. You can't go to the mass. You can't go to church. We're going to put you in prison. You're going to get all that free for the first 30 years. But we getting slave labor. Because
Absolutely.
that's what the 13th Amendment means.
Absolutely.
Once you commit a crime, you're a felony. You get a felony, it's a wrap for you. Your rights are taken away.
Absolutely.
You go to jail. They used to have it on TV here on 33 when they used to take young kids and show them how the prison system worked. And they had up there when they walked into the prison, the security company, the people that met them at the door once they got inside said, "You can't say nothing, you can't eat, you can't sleep, you can't even use the bathroom unless I let you."
Right.
And that's what you want to go to. That's what you want to be a part of. Oh, son, you know, it's hard work, but we can't. One person, I can't do it alone.
Absolutely. That's why it requires the community.
Thank you. But it's like everybody, some people really have egos. So if you come, because you used to be the president of NAACP, oh, she thinks she knows it all. She thinks she's this and that. If I come, oh, he used to run a club. They say, yo, was the worst club. How can you run a club for 15 years in a city and be labeled the worst club in the history? Absolutely. But when I start thinking about it, what they did is sabotage me. They went all the way back to the time the club was open and put all that information trying to say that was Picasso's. Because when we bought the business, the license
there had been situations.
Thank you.
So they put it all together.
Hello.
Instead of going on your credibility in the time that you had the club and look at those years of service. And those are the challenges that we have to deal with day in and day out. Yeah. And those are the things that we have to fight day in and day out. And that is why it is critically important that we recognize that, look, we can't, we can't do this by ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we're in this thing together.
Yeah. What they're doing is they'll talk to you and pacify you.
Exactly.
You got to come back 6 to 8 months with the same story, and the city ain't doing nothing.
Right.
So they know you're going to get tired. They're going to wear you down because, hey, I'm listening to you. I enjoy you. I enjoy you coming down here.
Right.
I thank you for bringing that information to us. And we'll get back with you. I'm still waiting now.
Absolutely. And you're constantly having to follow up and follow through. And that's the whole point of having a community, because guess what? If you go down there and you go a couple of times, and then you call up your bud and say, look, this is what I've been talking to the city about, and I haven't gotten any real response. I need you to take your crew down there, okay? Because we're all part of the same community. Right. And then they go down, so they don't get to wear you down like they thought, because they only had to deal with one person. Now we got people coming in from different directions. We got them coming in and we're surrounding them because we're saying, no, we're not going away. We are not going away.
And that's
what we want.
Right. Because that's what they do. You go in there, you can't even find a seat. You got to stand in the hallway. We ain't got no more room in here. Well, I'm going to be in here. What's going on?
Right.
We got to do the same thing to them.
Thank you.
We got to take 2 buses, 3 buses. What? You can't take 5. You can't take an hour and a half out of your busy schedule to change the system the way it is. Because once your son is involved in something, then you want to have a pity party.
Right.
The pity party is supposed to be before.
And you want everybody to come to your rescue, even though you weren't willing to go down and speak out, speak up, speak against anything when it was somebody other than you. And now you want everybody to come down. I still get calls from people and they call me up and they're like, so and so and so and so and so. I said, well, you remember the NAACP? No. I said, well, have you did anything in the community? Well, no. But you want me to get up, use my gas, use
Hello.
my time,
Hello.
and come down and help you fix something when you have never put any skin in the game, but now all of a sudden it's affecting you directly. Well, what affects, as Dr. King, what affects others indirectly affects you as well. Okay.
Right.
What affects others directly affects you indirectly.
Right.
Okay. I have to make sure I get that right. What affects others directly can still affect you indirectly. So it's important that we recognize that we're not in this by ourselves.
Right.
That when somebody in our community is hurt, then that's a hurt for us as well.
Mhm.
And if we don't sit here and get more engaged, more involved, and begin to push back against these things
Mhm.
and push back in a collective manner in a united community, then we're going to continue to see this. Our next generation is going to continue to see this.
Mhm.
And they're starting from scratch each and every time. And we should not be starting from scratch from generation to generation. That should not be happening. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So,
Just want to
but
praise.
again, we have these different issues that are going on in our community, and we need the input. We need the input. Thank you, Roderick.
Yeah.
We need the input.
Mhm.
Okay. Again, as you say, numbers is power. Okay. And so if we're going to change anything, as Mr. Crump was talking about on Saturday,
Mhm.
we're going to need input. And we definitely need input from our students, our young people. We definitely need input from our policymakers or our politicians. We need input from the enforcers. Okay. Enforcing what we can and cannot do. And that's our law enforcement. And we definitely need input from our overall community.
Yeah.
And the reason why I kind of separate our students out a little differently, because we were at Norfolk State. And so these are students from all over. They're not all students from Norfolk, Virginia.
Mhm.
And so in essence, they have their own infrastructure that's going on a college campus. And so it's important that we listen to what our college campuses students are saying, because we might find out something. We might learn something from them. Okay, that might be a little different than what we are noticing within our particular neighborhoods or in our cities around the Hampton Roads area. But then when we look at our community, we are looking at a family, and our family dynamics are very different. Whereas students, they in and of themselves are their own family on that college campus. So that's a little bit different than someone living in a house with a mom and dad, sisters and brothers. And so that's why I continue to put the students in a little bit of a separate category as it pertains to looking at the criminal elements, looking at what's taking place, and how do we keep each other safe. Because it's not just about keeping one group safe, it's about keeping all of us safe.
Yes.
And so when we look at our community, we want to look at our business owners. Again, if there's a business in our community, if we're in a predominantly Black community, but yet everything that is owned in that community is owned by somebody other than our cousins, our uncles, our aunts, our family, or people who look like each other, then we need to call out those businesses. We got one or two choices. We need to either stop buying from those businesses, or we need to call them out and say, I expect you to get engaged, because the money that I'm giving you is allowing you to send your child to college. The money that I'm spending with you is allowing you to buy your house, It's allowing you to feed your family. It is allowing you to put gas in your car or even buy a car. So since my community is paying for your well-being, then we want something, as they say, quid pro quo. We want something in return. Okay. So that shopping center that you have over there in this certain area, and you own the entire shopping center, and all the people are renting from you, I need you to clean that shopping center up. Okay.
Yeah.
I need you to fix it up. I need you to paint the outside and give it a new look, give it a facelift. So those are the conversations that we need to start having, because if young people see something bright and fresh and new, they have a tendency to look at it a little differently.
Yeah.
If they also see that these people who are now in our community are also offering them jobs, and they're taking your mom's money, your dad's money, and your brothers and sisters' money, but they say, look, okay, if you're uh, providing us money so that we can have a better lifestyle, I need to provide jobs for people who live in this neighborhood, who live in this community. So again, we need to start thinking from a quid pro quo standpoint. That means if they are not willing to do that, you need to stop buying from them. Community unity. Guess what? You can go over to College Park area, and there are a number of Black-owned businesses. The next thing is, those businesses, if they're renting from those places, then the Black-owned businesses need to come together and say, we need to stop renting from you guys. We need to own the whole entire shopping center. Okay? Community unity. So I want our community to think differently. This is important because we're talking generations. Again, when I opened up the show and I talked about education and I talked about CRT, what is happening with CRT is something that is a long game. It is not about CRT just for today. It's about all the different ways they can change that acronym and make it a homonym so that it has two different meanings, okay? So that CRT has two different meanings. And then the next thing is something new. And then that has a different meaning. You know, throughout, they have changed the language again and again and again, but never to our benefit, almost always 100% to our detriment, okay? So we need to understand that as we are growing, as we are changing, as things are changing all around us. We need to know it. We need to understand it. We need to read about it. And we need to go back and do our own investigations. Don't just rely on what we hear on TV and think that that's it. Go back and read about it, understand it, and all, so that you're able to be able to discuss it, and then you're able to challenge it, because some of this stuff needs to be challenged. As I always talk about, we're having weekly conversations, not just for information, but also from time to time we need to correct some of the stuff that they've told us that is not right. We also need to have some transformation, because some of us have been stuck in the same place for decades. It's time for some transformation, Black America, Black nation. It really is time, because we're hurting our next generation. I talk to people about the now, but I also talk to you about the next. So
Right.
this is both about the now, and it's also about the next. And if they're building a pipeline, if they're building infrastructure that is for way into the future, we should have a parallel system going on doing the same thing in order to protect our children, in order to protect our families, in order to protect our businesses, in order to protect those things that are important to us. And so we got to make a decision. What's important to Black America? What is it that you want to see different in our community that will ensure that our grandchildren, our great grandchildren will not have to suffer through the same things over and over again? We should not be starting and stopping. And it should not be, we got to start all over the minute the what is that? The boomers generation is gone. The folks that's coming behind should not have to start from scratch.
Yeah.
Okay. There should be an infrastructure in place, and there should be a process and a plan that they can follow to ensure that they're going to have success.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to determine how successful do they want to be? How successful do you want to be? Do you just want to barely get across the finish line? Or do you want to be really ahead of the pack? And as I close out with that, I'm always going to end with voting. It is important. It is important. I talked to you about the critical race theory. I talked to you about criminal justice and the importance of making sure that you get involved. And now finally, your vote counts. I love that. Your vote counts. It really does count. You know, look at the young man down in Florida, 25 years old, and won the primary for the election in the fall.
Yeah.
And if he wins, he'll be the youngest person elected to Congress. But we got an election coming up. And let me explain to you how important this election is. We have seen on our TV sets, on our internet, everywhere, where the FBI had to go in to a former to the house of the person who lived in public housing in Washington, D.C., and found all these classified documents. Now, when we talk about criminal justice, if there had been anybody from our community, they would have been in handcuffs.
Hello.
And voting is
out.
important.
I used to be the president, baby. You shouldn't have much jacket. Well, you got this.
Because obviously, the laws that we currently have on the books does not treat everybody the same. There should be no reason whatsoever with this type of evidence that there has been no one arrested, no one held, no one hauled down to the police department and asked questions of them. That should not be happening. So if we vote and put new people in office, let's make sure that we have solid laws on the books that never, ever again can someone go into office and say, well, it's kind of implied, but it's not really 100% a law. And so throughout 4 years, everything that had been assumed was law because people followed rules and regulations and not necessarily law. That was exposed, that it wasn't in writing, that it wasn't documented, that it wasn't etched in stone. And so for 4 years, we watched someone living in public housing in Washington, D.C., deciding not to follow any rules or regulations that had been followed for over a century plus. So I say that to say this. We need to vote. Election day is November the 11th. November 11th, 11/11. Thinking of Veterans Day. Election day is November the 8th, 2022.
Okay.
But the first day of in-person voting is September the 23rd, 2022, and that ends on November the 5th, 2022. So anybody who is already a registered voter, go ahead and decide you're going to vote early. Why is that important? Because there are people who like to vote in person or like to vote on election day, and guess what?
Right.
Something happens. They get in a car accident. So they were waiting to vote on election day, and for some reason, they couldn't get there. Maybe a family member got sick or whatever. So I'm recommending that more and more people take advantage of in-person early voting. The other thing is deadline to register to vote. It is so important. I want to encourage all Black groups and organizations. I have nothing against anybody else, okay? But I look at my community as a community that is in a different situation, okay? Many people in our community is in a hopeless situation. So I'm gonna fight. I kind of try to live my life somewhat like scripture, okay? Scripture says we are to help those who are in need. So since my community is in need, they're at the top of the list. All right. So when I get through the top of the list and I can make my way down, if you fall within the first five,
500.
then I might get to you, the first five. Okay. So 1 through 5. But I'm focusing on number one. And number one right now is my Black community. So to all of the groups and organizations that are out there, I encourage you, stop having voter registration for this group and this group and that group. Come together and work on one accord. Do activities that are engaging for our young people, where you can go to some of the churches, to some of the parks, to the African American Culture Center grounds. Utilize that area. It's in a heavily populated, densely populated area. Have some activities on those grounds and always include voter registration. We should be registering people to vote every single day from now until election day.
Yeah.
And we have a number of groups, and I don't want to run out of time. We have a number of groups who are endorsing candidates. And so take a look at the people that they are endorsing. And with that being said, I thank you so much for an hour to talk to the community, to talk to them, to provide them with information, correction, and transformation, and vote, 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 vote. And that's it for me, Georgia Allen, GA for Justice.
All righty. Another great show, another great topic. And we definitely need the motivation and the inspiration behind it because, our community is in dire strait, and our young people is the future leaders of this city and state and the country, the world. We got to do better. But once again, thank you, Georgia Allen. You've been listening and viewing GA for Justice with Georgia Allen. She'll be back next Thursday from 12 until 1. And don't forget to share this link with some of your people. And until then, we out of here.
Amen.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.